Hello, my name is Peter Larson. I'm the chair of the Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine, and I'm thrilled to be talking today with Jonathankuttab. Jonathan, welcome to spend some time with us.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Jonathan, I have met you very briefly before when you were in Ottawa, but we didn't really get a chance to talk. You're now physically located in the States, is that right, at least at the present time?
Right now, with this corona, my office is still in Jerusalem, but I am in the States.
Okay. I want to get to talking about your very interesting little book, Beyond a Two-State Solution, but just to set the stage a bit, tell us a little bit about you. Where do you come from? You're Palestinian. Where do you come from in Palestine? How do you come to be living in the States? And just tell us a bit about how you got from A to B.
Well, I'm a Palestinian. I'm an attorney. I studied in the States. I'm a member of the New York bar, the Israeli bar, and the
Huh.
Palestinian bar. My office is in Jerusalem.
So you're a
Uh,
Palestinian citizen of Israel, is that right? If you're in the Israeli
no,
bar?
I am not.
No.
I'm a resident of East Jerusalem, so I'm one of these halfway houses.
Right,
I'm a resident, but not a citizen in Israel.
right, right. Okay. And so
I'm a
you,
human rights activist. That's always been part of my interest and passion. And of course, I long and work for some kind of just peace between Israelis and Palestinians. That's always been my passion.
just as a resident of East Jerusalem, can you use a Palestinian resident of East Jerusalem? Can you use Tel Aviv Airport? Can you come in and out?
Yes, I can,
You can. As some of our
but
readers,
not the people in the West Bank, obviously, or Gaza cannot.
yes, that's right. I think some of our people watching today may not know that there is that difference that Palestinians who live in the West Bank are not allowed to use the Ben Gurion Airport, but that Palestinian citizens of Israel can do so. Okay. Um, so back to your book. Your book is called Beyond the Two-State Solution. It's very short. It's 80 pages, easy to read. And I think it's free as well. Is that not correct?
Yes, yeah, you can get a free copy through Nonviolence International, the PDF, or you can order it from Amazon or Kindle or some of these other platforms for a small sum. But
Okay.
you can download a free copy from Nonviolence International.
All right. We will I'll attach this to a blog post and I'll put the link there as well. But certainly short and free or cheap and well written are very good criterion for people looking for an interesting book to read. So good for you. All right. Um, what motivated you to write the book?
Well, actually, it started as an exercise. I was talking with a Jewish American friend, and we were talking first about the collapse of the two-state solution, that it's no longer possible, even if both sides wanted it very much, the governments, that the facts on the ground are such that it cannot be implemented. And I was one of the early proponents of a two-state solution. I thought it was a wonderful compromise, an attempt to deal with these two conflicting ideologies, Zionism and Palestinian nationalism. And then the other thing I was saying is that maybe these two ideologies do not give us what we want. Maybe what Palestinians need is not a Palestinian state, but some form of entity that provides them with a stake, that provides them with self-determination, that empowers them, that gives them freedom, that gives them sovereignty. And maybe what Israeli Jews want is not necessarily a Jewish state, but a state which provides them with security, with a cultural basis, with so we started saying, what are the minimum? What are the requirements that these ideologies promise to their groups, but cannot really fulfill? Because if you are a Jewish state, how do you deal with half your population being non-Jewish?
Mm-hmm. So you went
And if
through
you're
then
an
and
Arab
tried.
state, Palestine Arabiya, how do you deal with the fact that half the people in your Palestine are not Arabs?
So you develop in your book a kind of a list of what you think might be the minimum, quite apart from the state framework. What is it that people really want, and even more importantly, what do they need? What would be their minimum? And
Correct.
you describe that for the Palestinians, and you describe that equally for Jews or Israeli Jews. How did you develop those lists? Do they come out of your head, your experience, your
Totally.
conversations?
I point out that I have not made a systematic scientific poll of each community.
Right.
But I know about both communities quite intimately, actually. And I can even point out the time. There was a time when I was, during the negotiations, I was head of the Palestinian Legal Committee negotiating what came to be known as the Oslo Accords. Uh, and at one point, it suddenly struck me that the Israeli side needed or wanted a Palestinian state almost more than we did, that it was a necessity for them to create a Palestinian state or something that can be called a Palestinian state, so they don't have to deal with the hard questions and the hard issues which both sides need to deal with.
Particularly on the Jewish side, I think it's an interesting exercise for a Palestinian to go through a thinking about what do they need, what would be,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I once asked a Jewish rabbi who's a Zionist. I said, when you tell me you want a Jewish state, what do you want? What is it that you can't circumcise a state? What does a Jewish state mean to you?
Right.
And he said, he thought about this for a second. He says, well, I want there to be a place where any Jew, anytime, no questions asked, can go and live and be able to protect himself. I said, maybe I can offer you something better.
Mm-hmm.
How about a state where any Jew, anytime, no questions asked, can go where he doesn't need to protect himself because nobody's out to get him,
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't have the enemy, or because he has made a deal with the enemy that makes the enemy a friend or a co-citizen.
Right.
Because a state promises to give you that.
Right.
We are dominant. This is a Jewish state. This is an Arab state. And I'm saying, well, maybe I can give you that without the element of exclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
without denying the other, without eliminating or delegitimizing or disenfranchising or oppressing the other. If that can be done, then isn't that a better solution than to live in this zero-sum situation where every gain you make is a loss to me and every additional baby that's born to me is a
Sure.
greater threat to you?
Yeah. The question there is clearly whether he believes you, and even more, whether he believes that you could reflect or speak for the masses of Palestine. He may think that you're a very good guy, but that you're naive and you don't understand what method.
Yes. The issue for me, actually, the issue is not an issue of trust, which I don't know how you create. The issue is one of creating structures, guarantees, documents, a constitution, a framework, a system which will prevail regardless of how I or a few people on either side may think.
Right.
Partly maybe it's because I'm a lawyer.
Right.
Partly because I'm a believer in the rule of law. I believe in systems and structures rather than emotional or ideological slogans.
Sure. Okay. All right. Let me just flip over to the Palestinian side for a minute, because my experience, and yours may not be the same as mine. My experience is that many Palestinians now don't think there's such a thing as a two-state solution. They agree with you, but they also there's no major political party on the Palestinian side that adopts a one-state solution. Neither Fatah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Joint Arab List. There are lots of private people who say individually, but there's why is it that the call for a one-state solution is so far been basically ignored by, I'll call it Palestinian officialdom. I'm not sure how to refer.
One reason is because we have been told in no uncertain terms that if you talk one state, it means you don't accept a Jewish state. And if you don't accept a Jewish state, you're almost the same as Hitler. You want to destroy us, you want to throw us in the sea, you're denying us legitimacy.
Right.
So don't you dare use those words. If you want to have any even possibility of dialogue with us, talk two states and we'll talk about if it's possible, not possible, how to bring it about. But you start talking one state, we have nothing to talk about.
And does that pressure?
We were specifically and directly told one state is taboo, you don't talk that language.
Right. Now, does that pressure come only from Israelis, or does it come from the international community as well?
Oh, it came from the Israelis and from the Americans. And let's face it, international law and the international community has evolved towards accepting the two-state solution, which is the formula of land for peace, which is 242, 383. These are the UN resolutions that talked about that Israel would return the land that it captured in 1967. They were assisted by the fact that Israel said, we have no ambition.
Sure.
This was forced on.
I mean, the two-state solution actually was embedded in the original partition, right? I mean, that was the whole notion of partition, was to create a Jewish state and an Arab state, right? So it goes back even farther than you say. That's okay. All right.
Yes, that's correct. But that was much earlier, even before 47.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So no matter which way you look at it, the two-state solution is a compromise.
Sure.
It is not really an ideal solution. It's not an ideological solution. It's one that says, what can we do? We recognize the reality, and you have to give some, and you have to give some. And the beauty of the two-state solution is it doesn't require you to do any of the deep critical thinking that is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't challenge Palestinian nationalism. It doesn't challenge Zionism. It just says, just limit it geographically.
Right. Okay.
Exercise your prejudices in only one part of historic Palestine and leave the rest to the other side.
Now, your proposal, of course, is a compromise as well. In fact, I think from the outside, I would say as a non-Palestinian, the solution is necessarily going to be a compromise. Palestinians can't get everything they want, and Israeli Jews can't get everything they want. So it's going to have to be whether it's a geographic compromise or a human rights compromise or whatever. Would you agree with that proposition?
Yes, but you see, there's two ways of looking at compromise. Compromise can be a bad word. It means you give up part of what is really yours because you want to end the conflict and you want to end the struggle. Here I'm talking about a different kind of compromise that requires you to actually change your ideology, that removes exclusivity but leaves everything else intact. So as a Palestinian nationalist, yes, I'm compromising by accepting equality with 7 million Jews who, according to my ideology, are settler colonialists. They don't belong, they're strangers.
Right.
And the Zionists will also have to compromise by saying that the Jewish state that I've worked for and fought for and tried to get is not going to be exclusively Jewish. It's going to be both Jewish and Arab. So yes, in a sense, it's a compromise, and it's a much deeper compromise because it requires rethinking one's ideology.
Okay, interesting. On this issue of the one state versus two state, do you think that the North Americans who are sympathetic to human rights for Palestinians, given the fact that there is no major political party, it's arguing for a one state solution, that all the parties are arguing for a two state solution at the moment with more or less enthusiasm, what should be the position of non-Palestinians here in North America? Should we be actively supporting a one state solution? Should we be saying it's none of our business? What What do you recommend?
Well, in a way, if it was possible for the United States to stay out of this totally, it would be a wonderful boon, I think, because they have been an important element, but also a very negative element in the equation. Instead, I say something else. I say that the international community is a stakeholder
Mhm.
in what's happening because of the centrality of the Holy Land, its importance to Jews, Christians, and Muslims throughout the world. These other forces are necessarily stakeholders. The question is, are they stakeholders who support exclusive control and domination by one party or the other? Or are they stakeholders that say, we want to be part of this solution? We want access to our holy places. We want the ability to support Jewish life and culture or Arab life and culture. And so we can be part of this solution as stakeholders. And this is what I'm saying, that Americans who love Israelis or who love Palestinians can do so without hating the other group, can do so while supporting the humanity, the legitimacy, and the prosperity of both groups. That
Okay,
they
but
will
I'm
be
asking,
doing better for their group.
I get that. But the position of the Canadian government is that the answer is a two-state solution. That's the only answer, a two-state solution. Nothing else is acceptable. What should we be saying to our own government about its position?
Well, the first thing that needs to be said is that that solution is no longer possible.
Hmm.
That's why I spent a lot of the booklet explaining why the settlements have totally undermined that solution and why it's not possible, even if the Israeli government wants to move in that direction, for it to move. I talk about three different attempts at trying to extract the settlers out of these areas and show that they really don't work. In fact, the current pandemic gives us another example of how the whole system has been so entrenched
Mhm.
and so much apartheid like, that Israel can no longer be or claim to be a democracy when you have 700 or 800,000 Jewish settlers living all over the West Bank who are entitled to vaccination when Palestinians aren't.
Or not? Yes. Okay.
Uh, this is basically the premise of my book. You have to start with recognizing that the two-state solution, how it came about, why that language persists even among people who are convinced that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask you one last question. We're running out of time here. You've been very generous with your time this afternoon. For an Israeli who lives in Israel now, they have better schools, better houses, better work, and so on. Um, why in the world would they ever accept equality? Why would they give up? What combination of forces could lead a majority? There'll be some Israelis automatically who will be very brave people who will believe in equality. But what could lead them, a majority of Israelis, to realize we got to give up our privileges and we have to live equally with Palestinians inside Israel?
Well, why would any privileged group, why would slave owners, why would white supremacists in America accept equality?
Mm-hmm.
There is a natural resistance. You want to keep your privileges. And in fact, anybody who tries to take your privileged status away appears to be an enemy who is oppressing you, detracting from you. That is a natural phenomenon. I don't think any group gives up its privileges unless it is forced by internal and external factors to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And they do so because they can no longer maintain that position, or because they see that ultimately it cannot be sustained in the long run and they want to live there. Why did the Europeans accept decolonization? Why did the South African accept equality? Why did the slave owners accept removal of slavery. In fact, they didn't, and they had to be forced to it. And even after the end of slavery, they tried through Jim Crow and voter suppression, other ways to. Even today in America, we see a resistance against the calls for equality. But we also have to recognize that history is moving forward, that the call for equality and for human rights is irresistible. I mean, you forget that 100 years ago, women didn't even have the vote in the United States. 150 years ago, which is such a short time ago, African Americans were bought and sold as chattel. They were not even considered human beings. The woman who killed her own baby in order not to go back to the South could not be convicted of murder, but only of destruction of property,
Mhm.
because they didn't consider these to be human beings. We've changed. Today, you cannot have a system that's built on equality. Today, apartheid is not just a curse word. Today, apartheid is a crime under international law for which you can be tried and convicted.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, we have moved beyond the point where equality is a luxury that's a Western ideal for tree huggers. It's now a basic human demand and requirement. And despite all the hesitations and all the difficulties, that is where the human race is moving. And that is
John,
where you need to be.
Jonathankuttab, um, I can see your passion. It's reflected in your book, which is both passionate and very thoughtful. And I think a lot of people who are concerned about a fair, democratic solution for the Israel-Palestine issue would benefit from reading your book. Whether or not you have exactly the right answers or not, I don't know. That will be subject to debate within Palestinian society, within Israeli society. But I certainly think you've tried significantly to scout out a path of where there might be some kind of alternate approach, which might have more um, ability to move things forward. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for spending your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you.